Hey guys, bet you were expecting someone else. I'm not at work today, but I just figured that there are some things that is so important to me that I need to do them myself with you. So I made this video, flipped classroom stuff, to introduce the comics subject to y'all. You see, I brought you down to a very special place. This is my house, this is my home, and I'm going to show it to you now my home theater, as some people may refer to it as a man cave, I guess. If you're looking behind me right now, this is where I keep the good stuff. This is where I go to be alone, and this is where my kids love to be with their friends to play games or watch movies. This is my home theater, and as you can see behind me, it's filled with stuff. Let's go have a look. So the Phil Martin thing, that's a nickname I got a few years ago. Below the Phil Martin thing, you see why I'm called Phil Martin by people. This is at least most of my movie collection. And today we're going to have a look at some of these films and something I have stacked all the way over here. As you can see, this is where I keep my comics. Yeah, that's right. I read comics. I read a lot of them. And I think comics is a very important part of modern day literature. And we're going to have a look at that today. Right. It's hard to know where to begin. Comic books as a topic is huge. So I figured I'm going to focus on the things you already are familiar with, and that would probably be superheroes. So, you can actually notice in the shelf behind me there are two Superman statues holding together all my PlayStation games. Actually, most of them are my son's games, but yeah, I play as well. You see, yeah, I have Superman figures in my room because I happen to be a huge fan of the Man of Steel. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. Where does Superman come from? I'm not talking about the planet Krypton or the city of Smallville or Metropolis. I'm talking about, where did the idea of a Superman come from? Who on earth came up with the idea of a superhero? Because Superman is indeed the first one we know of who ever hit the comic books. Well, this is English class, and there is one thing you're going to learn more about in a few years' time, and that is something called the Great Depression. The Great Depression was during the first part of the 1930s in, well, actually all over the world, but it's especially hit America hard. The Great Depression is about a lot of people losing a lot of money on the stock market, Wall Street. People lost everything, people killed themselves, and the economy of the entire country went, well, to a very dark place. After the Great Depression, people needed to feel happy again. People needed to find meaning in their lives. And of course, this happened in many different ways, but one of the ways was through comic books. At the time when people needed joy the most, two young students called Chester and Siegel had an idea. They wanted to create, actually they wanted to create a supervillain. A villain means a bad person. So they came up with the idea based on the Great Depression where everyone lost their money. They came up with this gruesome character who could manipulate people with his mind and make a lot of money on it because suddenly money was a bad thing. And as they played along with this idea, they came to think that someone like that would be impossible to stop. He would be an invincible enemy. So they had this image of this bold guy with a big head that could do whatever he wanted and earn all the money in the world. And while working on this idea, they realized that this isn't a good idea. People won't get happy from reading this. This won't be fun. What we need is a symbol of hope. Someone who can stand up to someone like this. And as time rolled by, this big-headed, bold, super smart money guy turned into someone you may know as Lex Luthor, Superman's greatest enemy. a very normal person with a lot of money. And Superman became the hero of the story, a man from a different world sent to Earth to help us. That happened in the 1930s. That is a long time ago, people. Almost 90 years. And in 1938, the first comic hit the shelves in America with the Man of Steel holding up a car, saving another person. That's the first time we ever saw a superhero in a comic book. And it's right there in the shelf behind me. Of course, the almighty Superman didn't stay as the only hero for long. It didn't take long for people to start wanting something more real, and that's when this guy came along. You probably know him. The Dark Knight, also known as Batman, usually known as Batman, was the symbol of truth and justice. He used his brilliance to solve crime instead of superpowers. He didn't always look like that, though. For a while, he looked like this, because Batman emerged a lot earlier than the 2000s. Bet you haven't seen this one. This is from the 60s, actually. Not long after the Dark Knight came a woman along. This was, of course, Wonder Woman. Today she looks like this. The movie is only a few years old and was immensely popular, and she was a role model for young women back in the early days of comic books. After we had Wonder Woman and Superman and Batman and a lot of their friends, of course, a team-up became an issue. Brings me to my comics down here. JLA stands for Justice League of America. This is a modern-day comic, though. They look like this. And they didn't always. And the members of the JLA has changed over the years. And they also changed name to just Justice League after a while, simply because the of America thing became a bit too much of a nationalism for readers in other countries. The Justice League, of course, have their own movie as well. Let's see if we can find that. Oh, there we go. Oh. This is what they look like in movie version in the 2000s. Another interesting fact about the Justice League, and I'm going to turn to my Superman encyclopedia now, this book. This is not a comic, this is a book, a gift from my sister. An interesting thing about them is, this is the Justice League in their original form. They were created after World War II, once again because humans and people needed something to believe in, something to bring them hope and joy. And they were functioning much like the United Nations, the UN, are functioning today. Their purpose was to bring about peace in the world. This is a much later drawing or comic featuring the heroes a tad bit older. Their job was to bring peace to the world. So once again, this proves that superheroes are created with purpose. And as you can see, there have been quite many of them joining the Justice League over the time.
Right, so I'm about to nerd out completely on you guys now. It just occurred to me while talking about the Justice League being created after World War II. There are tons of movies created after World War II. I have a few examples here. This is Saving Private Ryan, great film. And these two, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, they are both movies about the Second World War, picturing sort of the same story, but from different angles. Now, these films aren't important to comics, of course, but the Second World War is really where one of the most important characters of the Marvel universe comes from. I'm talking about the Star-Spangled Man himself. This is Captain America, of course. The movie about Captain America was called Captain America the First Avenger, and the reason it's called that is because he was indeed the first of the superhero team, the Avengers. And, would you believe it, they have turned into nothing less than, can you see this? All of these films, and then some. I can't find my Iron Man 2. I think someone borrowed it from me. But anyway, you have Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, and of course the infamous Avengers movies. We're still waiting for the fourth one at the moment. These movies are a billion-dollar industry today, and they're all based on comic book superheroes created over the year. And an interesting fact about these guys from the Marvel Universe is that most of them were made by one single man, or at least the idea behind them came from one single man. I'm guessing some of you know him. I'll give you a chance to shout out his name right now. 3, 2, 1. Did anyone say Stan Lee? Well, he's this guy. And he is the creator of most of the Marvel Universe, actually. And it started as far back as World War II. Think about that. The ideas behind Marvel came as far back as World War II.
Isn't that kind of interesting? That all of our modern day superheroes actually have a very long history and were created for a reason, something completely different from what you probably imagined. As in the comic books, they were there because the people needed them. People needed heroes to look up to, so humans created them to help. Right, so I realize I'm ranting on and on about all of these guys, but I'm going to show you one thing before I end this film. You may have noticed, if you really paid attention, that I glimpsed through this shelf of comic books earlier, and if you go all the way to the top, we find something that has nothing to do with superheroes at all, and it's my favorite comic book series of all time. It's called, as you can see, Chew, and I have the complete series. I'm going to show you what that's all about. You see, comic books doesn't always have to be about superheroes, but you already know this. You can't pick up any newspaper without there being a comic strip there, like you've probably read Pondus or Nemi or Knøttene or something like that. These are all very nice, normal things. And you have Donald Duck and you have Mickey Mouse and all that. But sometimes you come across something that's purely fantastic, that just gets you in a way. Something that appeals to you, either because it's funny or dramatic or emotional, or in this case just very, very exciting and, well, horrific and grotesque. I'm talking about Chew. Now, the guy you can see in the picture is Tony Chew. Tony Chew is a cop. He investigates murder, but he has a very, very special gift. You've all heard about psychics, right? People who can see the future and things like that. Well, Mr. Chew here can see a murder victim's past, but only if he takes a bite out of him. That means he has to eat a part of his murder victim. If he does that, he can see who killed him. Well, it's a good gift to have, I guess, if you're a murder investigator. Now, Chew it's fun, but it's the dark kind of fun. I'm going to illustrate that by showing you a picture in here, which shows sort of the series grotesqueness. This is a guy eating another man's ear in rather graphic detail, and although that doesn't happen every day, something kind of strange or gruesome happens all the time in these 12 magazines. If you have the chance to pick up Chew, any issue of Chew, really you should. That this is the best comic series I've ever read, and I've read quite a few, I have to admit. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. I hope you've enjoyed this little video, and I hope that after watching this you have a little more understanding about what comic books are really about. They're not just this colorful entertainment for boys only. They're actually a valuable part of our history. They're an important part of literature. Today as much as 50 or 60 or 70 years ago. Comic books is a lot more than Donald Duck or Batman. It's whole worlds out there for you to explore, just like books are. They just show you the pictures as well. Comic books are works of art and should be appreciated. So now that you are going to read your own comic books in a week's time, I hope you will enjoy it. I hope you'll learn from it. Maybe you'll become a better drawer, maybe you'll become a better writer, who knows? I just hope that you will read it and understand this is actually just as important as reading any other piece of literature. So have fun with it.